All of us as neurodivergents have had some kind of experience where we were accused of saying something that was insensitive or hurtful, and we've been kind of oblivious as to why. And this is often the case because of mind blindness. We might not read the room or intuit how our words or actions might impact somebody, and we might shut down and become defensive and stand strong in our viewpoint that we didn't mean to hurt anybody, and not really realize that maybe the context, maybe the manner, maybe the timing of our delivery wasn't necessarily the most sensitive. Growing up in Australia, if somebody was being overly rigid, harsh, controlling, bossy, we would call them a Nazi. And when you really think of it broadly speaking, it's quite insensitive to many people to compare those qualities to a faction of humanity that committed gross, terrible atrocities. It's kind of belittling to the experiences of those who paid with their lives because of what the Nazi regime perpetuated. But colloquially, that's how the term was used. When I went to Germany at age 21, lived there briefly, I was in a library in Berlin, and there was a no phone policy. I got a phone call, and I answered it, and I was very quiet, and I was trying to head towards the door, and this librarian came at me immediately, talking to me in German, basically telling me I couldn't, trying to get me out. And they seemed kind of aggressive about it, and I was like, calm down in my head, but of course I was breaking the rule. And the friend who was calling me was German themselves, and I said, this librarian is being such a Nazi. And she said to me, you can't say that. You can't say that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, why not? That's how I've used the term, or how I've been raised to use the term. And she just kept saying, you can't say that. I'm like, why not? And I was confused, generally trying to understand, because I try to follow a lot of social rules once I understand them. And at no point in my history was it conveyed to me to use the word Nazi in that manner was offensive. Of course, I failed to read the context, which is, if you are German, it's pretty offensive to be compared to the darkest chapter in that nation's history, and to be compared to the most deplorable faction from their history, which is the Nazi Party. And I wasn't accusing my friend, I was accusing the librarian, but even for her, it was painfully cringeworthy and insensitive to be using that allegation so lightly, because in modern Germany, it's taken quite seriously, that chapter of their history. There's broad recognition of the impact. And it isn't very fair at all to be compared to, or have even see somebody be compared to that faction, because again, it's belittling and demeaning to the people who suffered and paid with their lives. But I didn't see that. I didn't grasp that, because in my mind, there was only one context in which I was operating, and I couldn't intuit or infer how my words or actions might have impacted the other people, and looked at the cultural context in which I was using that term now. And naturally, I got a bit defensive. My rejection sensitivity was triggered, and I didn't want to take that information into being, I only meant it this way, which is a common refrain for many of us, because we're like, why are we in trouble? Why are we being attacked? We only meant it with this intention. Why is it being read this way? And it can be very bemusing to suddenly have somebody have a completely different interpretation to what we intended, and then throw that in our face. And now looking back, I can understand context matters, and I was being insensitive. But in the moment, I couldn't respond very gracefully, because I just couldn't wrap my head around it. Hence, I was asking, why? To her, it seemed very obvious. To me, not at all. In hindsight, yes, I see it's obvious now, the context in which I was saying it. And I'm not proud of that moment. And I'm not proud of the moments when I trot all over people's toes, and I'm socially insensitive and don't take people's feelings or needs into consideration. I try my best in social situations, but I get things wrong, inevitably, being human. And those moments live as shame hangovers, in which I replay them and revisit them. This one, thankfully, I'm very kind towards myself about, but I think of it as a glaring example of one of the challenges I had socially as a young neurodivergent. Have you experienced something like this before? Have you said or done something that was deemed socially inappropriate and been oblivious as to why? Have you struggled to recalibrate in the moment and respond in an empathic way? Have you felt that you often slid into defensiveness because you just couldn't understand, or it felt like you were being taken out of context in what you were saying or your intentions. I would love to hear all about your experiences.